I think we also need to make sure that we have a government that calls what's going on in the Middle East what it is, which is genocide.
What's your take on what's going on in Syria?
Well, I don't think we should be paralyzed by fear when we're thinking about the refugee crisis coming out of Iraq and Syria. I mean, we have a responsibility as a country to this region of the world. I mean, people really who disagree on everything can agree that we do have we do have some culpability here. Some people would say it's because we invaded Iraq and destabilized the region. People who would disagree with that would say it's because we left without leaving a remnant force behind and without maintaining diplomatic ties behind as well. But in any case, there is a vacuum left in the Middle East that has led to a great deal of destabilization. And we need to be people who are making sure that we're secure. We have a vetting process right now. It goes on for about 2 years in every case. Someone who's attempting to plant a terrorist, the refugee process would be a really, really hard way to do that. And so we need to have compassion upon people who are fleeing from this sort of tyranny, many of which are our brothers and sisters in Christ. And so I think we also need to make sure that we have a government that calls what's going on in the Middle East what it is, which is genocide. The Obama administration is very reluctant to do that. They're willing to use the genocide label when it comes to Yazidis, and they're correct, that is genocide. But it's also genocide directed toward Christian communities. And so sometimes people will say, well, we shouldn't have a religious test or take religion into account when we're thinking about Middle East and the refugees there. I agree if what they mean by that is that we only care about Christians. But ISIS is making the religious distinctions. They're the ones specifically targeting Christian communities for murder, rape, kidnapping, and systemic persecution. And so we need to call that what it is, which is genocide. And to recognize that the refugee crisis, there's a limit on what the United States is able to do in terms of actually resettling refugees. We have to get at the root issue. Why are people seeking to flee from Syria, from Iraq, from other places in the Middle East? It's because they're being hounded and targeted and hunted down by murderous thugs. And so we need to address that and to be the people who are calling on the government to exercise its authority to do that.
What about part of the equation that says, look, why don't some of these Middle Eastern countries take a lot more than what we should? I mean, in essence, they kind of get a little bit more of the mindset of these folks coming in from Syria anyhow.
Well, yes. I mean, Jordan is receiving refugees, but you're exactly right. Saudi Arabia is doing virtually nothing for refugees. What I would say is we don't want to emulate Saudi Arabia, and we don't want to emulate Middle Eastern countries that are turning their back on this humanitarian crisis. That's been the case for a long time, where every time that we seek to work together with Middle Eastern countries, we find many of them that aren't all that interested in what's going on in their own backyard because they have their own geopolitical interests involved. I think we need to use whatever pressure that we have diplomatically upon those who are at least allegedly allies of the United States to step up, not only in terms of humanitarian needs, but also militarily. This can't be the United States alone or a few other governments together with the U.S.